Hi, my name is Shree, and let's learn something together. I gotta say, I was not preparing myself to make like a how-to video this time, but I was talking to my editor recently, and he wanted me to show him the ropes on how to make a thumbnail for a video. And I'd say that he is a really fast learner. I trained him to do like how to edit the reaction videos, and he picked up the pace and learned the rest of the stuff on its own. He's like on color grading levels, but he really gets stuck and like really gets intimidated by Photoshop. And not only Photoshop, but like the graphic design elements in Canva, in Gimp. So during that conversation, I realized that it's one of the biggest hassles for many YouTubers out there to make thumbnails for their great videos. In fact, when I first started out making video essays for my main channel, Shreenation, I struggled so much with thumbnails that I settled for like making thumbnails that didn't look very good. And as a result, my video really struggled with the algorithm. And that kind of taught me a lesson that thumbnails are very important. It is like the window to your video, and it's like it represents what your video is about, and it's the reason why many people even click on the video. That's why the CTR or click-through rate is high and low on some of my own videos and many others, I assume. And when I first started out, I had to learn every single step of making a video. I had to watch over 100 tutorials on how to cut an object, how to add titles, how to add text, how to color grade an object, how to add a background, and also understand graphic design that makes a thumbnail stand out from the rest. So I figured I should just put everything I know into one detailed tutorial on how to make the best thumbnail possible for your video. I also want to point out that even if you don't use Photoshop, this will help you learn Photoshop, but at the same time, I talk about the principles of thumbnail design, the graphic design that goes behind the thumbnail. So if you're using Canva or Affinity Designer or Gimp or any AI tools out there, the principles will help you determine what is the best way to align text, subjects, objects, or anything else on your thumbnail. I will also add shortcuts for MacBook as well as Windows, and also for the newer and older versions of Photoshop. This is also just I would say, a very beginner-friendly thumbnail tutorial. So if you're a very advanced Photoshop user, there are many different channels that would help you out with that. My favorite is Piximperfect. But if you are a beginner, or if you want to know about the principles of thumbnail design, as well as go with me step by step on how to add the background, add an object, add text. So sit back and relax, and I hope you give this video a chance, and in fact rewind in some parts if you need to, because you won't be getting a detailed thumbnail tutorial like this ever before. And also leave in the comments below after watching this video if you want me to make any other tutorials on any other editing aspects and the filmmaking aspects of YouTube as well. Let's do it. So this is the thumbnail that I've created. As you can see, it's I'm using in Photoshop, and my goal today is that I want to teach you the principles of making a thumbnail as well, so that if you don't have Photoshop or don't want to use Photoshop, you can use the same principles in Affinity Designer, Gimp, Photoscape, Canva, anything that you like, even AI tools. You just need to know the basics of like the graphic design used in a thumbnail. So what we have is a full resolution of the thumbnail, but the thing is, when you make a thumbnail like this, you'd be very lucky if your subscriber, if a viewer sees this full picture. Because if they do see this picture, they would see it on a very large television, but usually they'd be very far away. When you view a large television, you don't see it right up front. So what you have to expect is the thumbnail, usually if they are on a tablet, this is the resolution they'll see. I'm pressing Alt and scrolling for zooming out, by the way. And if they are on a mobile, this is the resolution they'll probably see. Like if you're lucky, they have a big phone, this is much what they'll see. This much is what they'll see. And if they're on a smaller phone, if they're an iPhone 5 user, they do exist, by the way, this is what they'll see. So what you're dealing with is a very smaller picture that conveys the most information, which I don't have a problem with, but you know, you have to like immediately grab their attention. So even on desktop, this much is what they'll see. So the basics of a thumbnail design is less is more. By that I mean, if you have subjects on your thumbnail, 2 is like these two people. This is me, this is Superman here. 2 is like mostly enough. Sometimes you can use 3 people, but the maximum I'd suggest that if you have like people as your subjects on the thumbnail, 4 is like the maximum. You would see some thumbnails like Philip DeFranco's with 3 people, some thumbnails have 4 people, but maximum people use like 1 or 2 objects on the thumbnail, just because the thumbnail has to convey what the video is most about. The thumbnail can also be about like about objects like buildings, about an incident in history, or something even funny like a really weird ironic thumbnail. But whatever it is, the subject should be highlighted in the middle or on the side or on both sides. So in this one, you have Christopher Reeve, and myself, and Gene Hackman. Right when I zoom out, pressing Alt and scrolling out, you can see that Gene Hackman is already being blurred out because both these subjects have been highlighted with the word iconic in between. So now when it comes to text, when it comes to typography, using the least amount of words on a thumbnail is better. You're not creating a brochure where you're like adding too many words. And on a thumbnail, when you have too many words, people can't read so much information. The maximum I'd suggest is using 4 words. But when you're using 4 words, sometimes I believe that even that is too much. But try and highlight a single word in those 4 words as standing out. You can use a different font for that 3rd word or the 2nd word, or you can use a different color. For example, if you say "it is not okay" or something like that, try and highlight "not." Like put a different color on "not," or put a different like put a cursive typography on it so that it stands out. So here I'm only using 1 word, and I'm using an arrow here to point to Reeves. So that kind of like gives you a message that this is a video that's talking about the positives of the first Superman movie. And I'm mentioning that, it is iconic. It just talks about it right away. So let's start from the beginning. So first, what you need to do is click on File and New. And then what you do is create a preset. Now, usually you'd have like a custom on whatever Photoshop format you're using, whether it's CC or CS, and the width should be 1920 pixels, height should be 1080 pixels, resolution should be 72 pixels an inch, RGB color should be 8-bit, and the background content should be white just because it pops every other color that you might see. And pixel aspect ratio square pixels, and this is the color profile. I don't know much about that one. And what you can do is, whichever version of Photoshop you're using, you try and save the preset. You can save the preset, and then you'd get name the preset. You can name it thumbnail YouTube or YouTube thumbnail, and save it. So the next time when you open up, on the drop down menu, you will find that preset. So, okay. Immediately it opens up a new background. Now the background layer should always be locked. Don't open it because this is the canvas that you're painting on. Try and have we'll put more and more layers on top of it, but this is what you want to start off with. So what I'm going to try and replicate is try and put these 4 things on my new thumbnail, which is the background. In the background, I've used a flag. If it's not obvious, you can see that there's an American flag in the background. It's much darker. The reason why I made it darker is so that my subjects, Christopher Reeves and myself, would pop out. But you don't necessarily have to do that. If you want to put a blue sky or something behind your building or something like that, you don't necessarily have to make it darker. The reason why I gave this is because I could definitely work with a white background, but the American flag kind of suggests that, this it's a very famous movie that talks about the ultimate superhero and the first American superhero. I'm not sure, but I felt like the flag would make a good background for this. So we're going to try and do that here. So I've already downloaded the items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this American flag and I'm going to drag it right here. So as you can see, the photo is actually smaller than my background, which was a 1920 to 1080 full HD cover. So what I'm going to do is as you can see, I'm going to go to these 4 corners, and you can actually drag it down like this if you have a newer version, but if you have an older version, you can press Shift, and then you can pull it down like this. The reason why I'm telling you to hold Shift is because sometimes you may make the mistake and the resolution would look like this. You don't want to do that, so Control Z to undo, drag it, and hit OK. Now this looks much better. And I'm going to name this something else. I'm going to name it background or BG. The reason is because I just want to remember what layer it is so I can come back and make some changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and darken this a little bit. I'm going to click on an adjustment layer like this. You would see this panel called adjustments and styles. If you don't have this, you can just go to window and hit on adjustments and it'll show up. So I'm going to click on brightness and contrast. And I'm going to hit the contrast a little bit to 60 or something like that. And then I'm going to add another layer. As you can see, I'm not clipping this here if you know Photoshop, but I'm going to show that a little bit later. I'm going to use levels. I'm going to try and darken this a little bit further. That's fine. And I'm going to increase a little brightness, a little bit. All right. And then I'm going to hit on curves. Or do I not give curves? No, I'm going to go for exposure. I'm going to decrease the exposure a bit. I think that's good enough. The reason why I'm decreasing the gamma correction exposure is I want to darken the image. If you want to brighten the image and darken your subjects, you can do that as well. Just go to drag these in the opposite direction. Whatever it is you prefer. This is your image. Now I'm happy with this, but I'd like to add an additional darkening effect. You don't necessarily have to do that, but you can learn it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here in this panel and I'm hit create a new layer. Now what's going to do, this is a new layer. This is basically another canvas I'm going to paint onto. So I'm going to zoom out, scrolling and pressing Alt. And I'm going to use something called the gradient tool, which is G right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some gradients to this image. As you can see, I'm going to left click here and drag it here. Oh, so the reason why that turned into yellow is because this is yellow here. I forgot. So I'm going to hit X and this inverts itself. If you don't have the black color here, you can just click here and just drag this right to the black at the blackest point. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click and I'm going to drag here and you can see a bit of darkening going on. Then another here and then another here and more here. And maybe on the side too, a little bit of vignette. This and this. I'm happy with it. You can see the vignette showing up here in that layer. I'm just going to call it vignette. All right. So this is a full background that I got. I'm happy with the background, and you can also group all of these layers as I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you right now. You can hit here, hold shift, hit the layer that constituted the final aspect of the background and hit Control G. I'm going to call this BG. Next time you want to remove this or add this, you can just delete the whole thing, or you can hit on this I button here and it'll go away. Or you can hit this arrow here and it'll drop down, it'll show you everything. The reason why I do this is because sometimes when I, like, let's say, cut another subject like Superman here or myself, I can move the whole thing around, including the glow and everything. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my first subject in this image, which is going to be Superman. So I'm going to try and do the left and right first. So I'm going to first cut out the left subject. So that was Superman, and I downloaded this image. Now, when it comes to images, try and find something that's not copyright free, that's royalty free. There are a lot of websites out there called Pexels, Pixabay. You'll get a lot of free photos. The reason why I picked this wallpaper is because the main subject of my video was Superman. So I picked this one. I got this from like a free wallpaper website, but just check if there are any issues with copyright or something before you download an image and use it for a thumbnail. So I'm happy with this resolution for now, but the reason being that we're gonna cut out only Gene Hackman and Superman, and we don't need the text here. So there are many different ways to cut out a subject from a picture. You can use the pen tool if you know how to use it, which is like, it will give you the best possible outcome. It's very precise if you know how to use it. And there's like very little to no mistakes when you use the pen tool. But I'm not going to use the pen tool, I believe, because it like deserves its own tutorial. It's a very long process and you need to understand how to use it. And what instead I'm going to do is I'm going to try and use a simpler tool called the quick selection tool, which is right here. It's W. Just want to point it out. Make sure when you use the quick selection tool, you use the middle section, which is the plus, and auto enhance should be on here. The quick selection tool helps you cut out an object faster than the pen tool, and there are also ways to tweak it and make it look much better, and almost like a pen tool. And it helps with like creating thumbnails at a faster rate, especially if you're like a daily uploader, and the pen tool can take a lot more time than the quick selection tool. I'm gonna name this Superman before I begin. So I'm gonna name the thing. I'm just double clicking and then it's just like giving me this. So I've used the quick selection tool. Now the quick selection tool, to use the quick selection tool, I'm going to zoom in. I'm scrolling in and hit while holding on to Alt here. So to increase the size of this quick selection tool here, I'm going to use the bracket arrows, bracket keys on my keyboard. The right one increases it and the left one decreases it. So I'm just pressing the bracket tool. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to left click on this. And as you can see, it's like capturing a lot of this. So we're going to fix that. And I'm going to decrease it a little bit to capture his head as well. And a little bit smaller to capture his ear. And also Gene Hackman's physique. His cape. And as you can see, it's also capturing the buildings and such. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, pressing Alt and scrolling. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt again and then left click. As you can see, in the middle of my circle, there is a plus sign. And when I press Alt, it turns into a minus sign. So we're canceling out any of the selections that we don't need. And then I'm going to release Alt again. And then it's turning into a plus sign again. So now I'm going to add more. And then again, I'm going to decrease the size a little bit. And then I'm going to decrease a little bit more. Increase, press Alt, decrease. Press Alt and left click. Okay, so I decreased a little too much. I'm going to try and speed this process up so you can, save time. Okay, so I'm quite happy with the selection I've made here. There's also additional things you can do by pressing on this icon. There's a lot more that you can get a lot more precise selection out of this, but I'm quite happy with it. Don't have to go so advanced for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to the right and I'm going to hit this, add layer mask. Now it has cut out the thing that I want. As you can see, it has cut out the subject here in the white on the right side, and the rest of it has been removed. So I'm going to try and refine this a bit more. As you can see, it's a little jagged here. I don't like that. I'm going to try and fix that a little bit. There's a lot better ways to fix it. But before I do anything, I'm going to just try and increase the size of this layer a bit. So in order to increase the size, I'm again going on the corners and dragging. I'm also holding Shift because this is an older one. If you have a newer version of Photoshop, you don't have to hold Alt. So I'm going to hit the tick mark here. Okay, so as I was speaking about refining the edges, I'm going to select this mask, left click on it, and then I'm going to right click on it, and then I'm going to hit Refine Mask. So here, I'm going to smooth it out a little bit, give it a 20, contrast, give it a 30. And then I'm going to feather it a little bit. The feather means that it's going to smoothen out the edges a bit. You can notice it a little bit as I'm working here. And then Shift Edge, I'm going to pull this on the left, because it's going to shift the edge a little bit. So as you can see, it's cutting out a lot more. You can also smooth it out yourself a little bit, but because this thing had, I'm going to Control Z this, I'm going to undo it. Because it had so much information in the background, I'm going to try and, I'm happy with this. So I'm going to try and not do that. The reason why I talked about the information in the background is that if your subject is standing in front of a green screen or standing in front of a white wall or something and they're wearing like colorful clothing, it's very easy to cut them out because the background is like a plain neutral color. But because there were like a lot of buildings behind Superman and Gene Hackman, it was very hard to cut them out even using the quick selection tool. So just keep that in mind when you're like, if you're photographing yourself or you're photographing a subject, make sure that they're standing in front of a plain white wall or a green screen. So I'm quite happy with this, but I would like to remove this part a little bit. I feel like I cut out a little too much here. So I'm going to use the eraser tool here, which is E. So go for the eraser tool. And I'm going to increase the size a little bit. And my opacity and flow is a little decreased because it just 100% of everything makes it too accurate. So I'm going to use this one. This is a very accurate eraser, but I'm going to decrease the hardness just because it like removes a lot. So here's the principle. You see these two white and black colors here. When it goes to black, it adds stuff, as you can see. I'm going to undo it again. But if you go to white, it removes things. So that means I'm removing things. But if I want to add something, let's say I go too far, I'm going to press X again, and then it just adds things again. So black adds, white erases. I'm going to go with white again. I'm going to see if there's any additional shit that I need to remove. I'm just removing any edges that I'm not happy with. I'm going to try and speed this up if it's too much, but I feel like it's just fine. There's a bit of line there. I'm not worried about that too much. I feel like there's like some details of buildings in the background. I'm erasing that from his hair. And the biggest concern for me is this little bit of a building detail near them. If I zoom in too much, if I press Alt and zoom in, you can see the pixels too, but that's fine. We're just like doing some additional work here. So I'm going to try and remove that a little bit. I'm going to hide the background layer just so I can see how much I've erased. So I'm going to decrease the eraser a bit. I'm using the bracket keys again, just for precision. So I'm happy with this. I think we've done all we need to do. It looks very clean. So I'm going to add the back. I'm going to make the background layer visible again. So I'm cool with this. So the next thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try and brighten this image. It looks very like, you know, it looks fine, but I want it to stand out from the flag. I feel like the flag is kind of like, it's, the Superman is kind of like not as bright as I'd like him to be. The flag is still standing out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do the adjustment layer again, like we did with the background. Remember these three: brightness, levels, exposure. But we're going to do it, and I'm just going to show you something here. We click on brightness, and this layer shows up as before. But now if I increase the brightness, as you can notice, everything is getting bright. If I darken, everything is getting dark. Like the flag, everything. So that's not good. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this, and then we're going to create clipping mask. So as you can see, this arrow has popped out, which means that now if I brighten anything or darken anything, it's only going to apply to the layer beneath the arrow is pointing at, which is the Superman layer. So it's only going to make changes to this layer. We have clipped this layer to the layer below. So now, as you can see, if we brighten, only Superman gets brightened. If we darken, only Superman gets darkened. So I'm just going to add a little bit here, maybe 25 or something like that. 25 here too. I'm quite happy with it. Then I'm going to add the curves layer to him just because of a little lightness and darkness. Okay, so we're going to do the same create clipping mask on the curves layer again. As you can see, it does not have that arrow, so it's going to apply the darkness and lightness to everything. So we can go and create clipping mask like this, But if you don't want to keep doing that over and over again, so what we're going to do is we're going to delete it. We're going to select the Superman layer where we want the clipping masked new layer, the adjustments layer. And then we're going to hit whatever layer you want, curves. So now you can see it immediately clips onto Superman. Because of the previous adjustment layer that we have clipped, it's now clipped onto the previous one as well. Or if you forget to do it, just don't forget to right click and create clipping mask, or if you don't want to, just release clipping mask or delete the adjustment layer. So we're going to apply a little lightness and darkness to Superman. I'm happy with it. This is just personal preference. I'm not saying this is exactly the way you need to lighten and darken and brighten your subject. You can just use your own eyes to make sure how bright or dark you want your subject. Now I'm going to add the levels layer. So we're on levels. I'm just going to try and lighten and darken the image. Giving him some shadows. Some extra shadows. And then brightening up his face a little bit. Again, personal preference. Cool. So I'm quite happy with this. The next thing I want to do is add a little bit of glow to Superman. There are many different ways to add a glow. I'm going to show you the most basic one. We double click on an empty area on the layer that we want the glow on. Let's say Superman. Just remember that this is only going to add the glow on the corners here and not on the flag or anything else. So we're double clicking on this layer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select outer glow. And immediately you can see like a glow has already started showing on a default color. So we don't want this yellow color. We want white. So as you can see, the white is already showing up. And I want this to be normal. And opacity, which means the amount you can see. So I want to add this to 100%. And I'm going to increase the size. So as I increase the size, you can see it's like popping off a little bit more. And I'm quite happy with this one. I want to show you a second method, but before that, you can also be a bit extra about this and add a bit of shadow on the corners. So you can go to inner shadow. You can already see like a bit of shadow showing up. So you can go to normal. And I'm deselecting use global light just for now. And then you can hit size. And you can see like a little bit of shadow showing up in the corners. You can increase this as much as you want, just for a bit of definition. And you can also decrease the opacity so that it doesn't look too dark. It's a little realistic. So I'm happy with it. Now the second method I'm going to show is I'm going to add a layer beneath this layer, beneath the Superman layer. So I'm going to select the layer beneath Superman, just so I can create a new layer below Superman's layer, below the objects layer. You can also select it here and create one and just drag it down. So let's say it's selected on the topmost layer, and then I'm going to go here and create a new layer. Now this layer shows up here. I'm going to add it. I'm going to add a yellow glow because there is a yellow glow showing up behind Gene Hackman's. So I'm going to add a yellow color to it. So I'm going to call it yellow. So I'm going to drag this right underneath Superman, the layer called Superman. But just make sure that it doesn't go inside this BG group because it's going to go inside the folder. So make sure when you see a line, you drop it here, because if you do this, it'll just go inside the background thing. So no. So now this is yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and add a glow behind this layer. As you can see in this layer, there is a yellow glow showing up, and it looks like much like a spray paint effect. You don't necessarily have to do this for your photograph. You can download a PNG. You can put fire behind your layer. You can add some kind of like, sparkles or flames or whatever it is you want, like a cool neon glow too. There are different tutorials for that too. But I do like this like spray paint effect, so I'm going to try and recreate that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select brush, which is B. You can right click on here and select this one, and then this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the size to 800, select this one, which is much like a lighter brush. Then I'm going to select opacity to 50% or 49% or whatever. Then I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And then in the color, I'm going to select this and go to yellow, or if I already have a yellow, then X. So the yellow is showing up. So I'm going to make sure that it's the kind of yellow I want. I want to recreate this type of yellow right behind Gene Hackman and right what he has on his chest. So now I'm going to left click and I'm going to spray paint. So as you can see, left click, left click, left click, click. I'm spray painting it behind them. So it's adding a little bit of color behind them. We don't want to do it too much. We don't want too much color. It's just an additional glow to make them shine from the rest of the things on the thumbnail. So I think this is good enough. Okay, so you can do an additional, you can have the layer selected, go here to normal and make it hard light. So hard light makes it look much more like, it makes it look much more contrasted than like just mild yellow or mild red or whatever color you choose. So I'm quite cool with it. You can also add any other color you want. You don't necessarily have to make it yellow or anything. So I'm going to click on this again, which is the move tool. Now select this yellow, for instance, this layer, and all the layer that is affecting this thing, and we're going to make a group again, Control G, and I'm going to call it Superman. The reason why I like grouping things is because when you click on the move tool, which is V, this above one here, you can move the entire thing around. So if you don't like it on the left, you can put it on the right. So I'm going to move this a little bit here. So I'm going to move it downwards again a little bit. And I'm going to increase the size. Control T, which is selecting all the layers in this group. And increase the size a little bit. I'm going to move it again. I'm using the arrow keys, left and right on my keyboard. Moving it around. Selecting the tick mark, and I'm cool with it. So I'm quite happy with this effect here. I'm going to do the same with myself on the thumbnail. Like in this one here, I'm using a very bright picture of myself smiling with a big expression. You can use something of yourself if you want yourself on the thumbnail, or if you want some other subject, maybe a movie you're talking about, maybe a person, a personality that you're talking about. Put a thumbnail with their picture on it, but make sure the face is much more lit up and animated with a great expression or any kind of shocked expression or anything you want. So I'm going to do everything I did with the Superman picture to myself. I'm going to take the picture, I'm going to drag it here, and this is what it is. As you can see, I'm actually looking in the opposite direction, but I flipped it. So what I did was I right-clicked it and flip horizontal. Then I'm going to click OK. And as you can see, I did not have a green screen when I took this picture of myself. I only had this like red curtain. It's still good enough to use the quick selection tool on myself to cut myself out from the background, but I would still very much have preferred a green screen. I don't know why I still don't have a green screen. So it makes it much easier to cut yourself out. So I'm gonna call this me. And then again, I'm going to use the quick selection tool, which is W. Right click here, not the magic wand, the quick selection. I'm going to use the bracket tool again to increase the size of the quick selection tool. And I'm going to do the same thing again, select as much as I need to. And now I'm going to remove anything I don't need. I'm going to zoom in using Alt and scroll. Decrease the size and holding Alt again, which makes it a minus sign on the quick selection. I'm going to brush it off here like this. Release Alt, add anything I need, press Alt again, delete anything I don't need. So I'm quite happy with the selection I've made. So I'm going to hit on the add layer mask at the bottom. Again, it has cut me out. And I'm not happy with the edges. So I'm going to go right click, refine mask. Again, I'm going to smooth the edge with 20, contrast 30. I'm going to feather it a little bit, smoothing out the edges. And then I'm going to shift the edge narrowly a little bit. I think I'm quite happy with it. You can also, once again, use left click and drag just to clean up anything you need. Like I said, because the background was a single color, I'm able to like remove any blemishes here. But again, I don't recommend using this too much. As you can see, it's like capturing some additional things. I'm going to Control Z. I'm going to undo that. Like it, as you can see, it removes too much stuff. So I'm not happy with that. So no. Instead, I just like to use the eraser tool if there are any mistakes. So I'm going to zoom in again. As you can see, I'm going to hide the background again. As you can see, the red is showing up again. So again, I'm going to use eraser, E here, right click and E, not background eraser. I'm going to remove some with the white selected. I'm going to use some of this here, just remove anything I don't need. Of course, I'm not going to remove too much. You can also use the brush tool for this, by the way. It works. Just hit on B and make sure the mask is selected so you can remove using the white and black tools. So I feel like a little too much was erased here, so I'm going to go hit X. It selects the black. Now I'm going to add stuff here. Oh, added too much. Control Z. I'm going to add this. I'm going to add a bit of that t-shirt here. A little bit. I think that's maybe a little too much. It's okay. We don't have to be so precise. So I'm going to add a little bit of that t-shirt again. All right. I think I'm happy with it. Oh, there's a bit of red here. So I'm going to hit on X again for the white. Remove this garbage. All right. With the hair, I think it's all right. Okay. So we're happy. So I'm going to go hit on move again, which is V. And I'm going to place it here. Oh, enable the background again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tilt this to make sure my eye line matches here as if I'm looking at him. So what I'm going to do is Control T. And when my cursor goes here, as you can see, a curve arrow appears. So what this means is that I can just left click and drag this way and it curves this, it curves this layer like this. A little bit like this. And since it's cutting out some parts of my body here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And then I'm going to hold shift and pull this again. Or in a new version, you don't even have to hold shift, but you can hold shift and hit the corner and pull it like this. I'm going to increase the size a little bit here too. I think my head is cutting up a little bit, so I'm going to pull this down. I think I'm going to have to increase this a little bit more here. And maybe add a bit extra curve. This is all up to you, by the way. This is all up for your choice. However you want to make the thumbnail look. It's all up to you. I think I'm going to add myself a little bit on the side here. I'm happy with it. So I'm going to hit on the tick mark. So in order, if you want like a much more precise thumbnail, you can also go to this rulers here. You can hit on Control R to enable it, these rulers. And then you can pull one and just keep slowly dragging it and it immediately captures the middle part, as you can see. It like sticks here like this. As you can see, it made a movement. So this is like the middle portion right here and you can release it. This is a ruler. So it guides you the middle part here or any kind of like headroom you need. You can also match it like this here and release it. Superman seems to be showing up a little bit over the line. Of course, it's not really that important, but if you need a bit of a geometrically precise alignment, you can use these. Or if you want to remove these alignments, you can go to View and Clear Guides. So it just removes all of this. So I'm quite happy with the cut up I've made of myself, but I'm going to do the same thing I did with Superman. I'm going to add some adjustments to myself. And by that I mean I hit on brightness, but I go right click and create clipping mask. So I'm going to do the same here as I did with Superman. Maybe I'll add a little vibrance to my photo too. It looks a little bland. And some saturation for the colors. I think I'm happy with it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an adjustment layer for a color balance because I want to match my colors with this other object here of Superman. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit on this one, color balance in adjustments. And this is, of course, make sure to create clipping mask if not. And then I'm going to look at myself and see if the colors, this is all subjective. This is all up to you. If you want to match your color, if this is a red object, you can hit this and make yourself red as well if you want, or blue, whatever it is. I'm going to add a little bit of a yellow to my mid-tone, maybe? No. I'm going to add some shadows. I'm going to add some cyan to my shadow. And I'm going to add some blue to my highlights. So this is all subjective, but I'm quite happy with it. You don't necessarily have to add the color balance. If you're not happy with it, you can just like go ahead and just press delete. It'll go remove itself. So again, I'm going to use the like outer glow here. But like I added an outer glow of white here by right clicking and using the outer glow. There's also another method to add an outer glow, like we did with the spray paint effect for Superman, but I'm going to try and use another outer glow for myself, but using the same spray paint effect. So I'm going to hit on new layer again, create a new layer. I'm going to try and put it right below myself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this color here, and I'm going to make it fully white. And I'm going to go to the brush tool, right click and B, this brush tool, and it's in 800. I'm going to use the bracket keys and shrink it to 400. Now I'm going to spray paint a little bit of white here. As you can see, it's showing up. You can see it here. So it's adding like a halo white spray paint behind me. You can also do that, or you can use this precise lining of outer glow. Both things are okay. So I'm quite happy with this head halo that I've made for myself. I'm not going to put it all over myself. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to balance out the colors. The main color of Superman is like red and yellow. So we use the yellow spray paint here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the red spray paint behind myself, just to like match with the American flag and at the same time with the colors of Superman. So I'm going to select another layer. Create a new layer. I'm going to put this underneath the white one just because. And I'm going to spray paint a red color. So I'm going to click on that color again. I'm going to go and find the red here. And I'm going to make sure that this red is highlighted. I'm going to, instead of the 400, I'm going to increase it to 800 again using my bracket keys. Or also you can go here and go to 800px. This one should be selected. And then I'm going to spray paint some red. As you can see, the red is showing up. It's looking pretty good. Scroll, zoom out a little bit. So I think that's quite enough. We don't want too much color. So again, I'm going to go into this one and then I'm going to turn it into hard light because it makes the color more contrasted. So this is the glow I added to myself. So again, I'm going to group all of these layers. I have this selected. I'm going to hold Shift, select this layer that is all connected to myself. This subject over here, again, Control G, and then I'm going to call this me. Again, the reason why I do this is so I can click on V or Move Tool. And then I'm going to, like, move the whole thing if I want. So now we're going to move on to text. Like I said in the beginning of this video, there shouldn't be too much text on your thumbnail. We're not exactly creating a brochure, but limit it to at the least amount of words possible. 3 or 4 should be your like a maximum target. So in this picture, I'm using one very big word followed by an arrow. So as you can see, I've used the arrow layer here and the iconic text. So I'm going to recreate this again. So I'm going to use the text layer, which is T. You can find this here, T. So the horizontal type tool is selected. I'm going to use a big font here, something that's like large. You can use Impact or something close to it. I'm going to use this one. I really like it. I'm going to capitalize it and I'm going to type iconic. The reason it's showing up as red is because it is at 72 size. The color is red and it's in sharp, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make this white here. You can also do this later on, but I'm just going to do it right now. I'm going to select that. Okay. And then I'm going to close caps lock and I'm going to use the V tool again, which is the move tool. I'm going to move it here and then I'm going to Control T just so I can increase the size. Again, I'm going to hold Shift and press like this. And I'm going to release Shift and I'm going to drag it a little bit on the left side just to make this a little bigger. Then I'm going to, again, go to the side when the curved arrow shows up and make it a little tilted. Maybe on the right side a little bit like this. I think I did that beforehand, I forgot. So I'm going to use it here. Increase the size a little bit. Yeah, that's about it. So I'm happy with it. So I'm going to make this stand out a little bit more. I'm going to make a stamp effect on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and on an empty space, I'm going to double click. This screen is going to show up again. I'm going to use bevel and emboss. So as you can see, it shows up as an emboss effect, as if somebody stamped this word here. I really like that. And I'm going to contour that a little bit so it stands out a little bit more. This text looks a little bit like a stamp on a paper. So I'm going to use the stroke effect here. The stroke is, it's like using a marker on top of the layer. I'm going to use stroke. And you can see already the black lines are showing up. And I'm going to increase the size a little bit for more impact. I think that's more than enough, isn't it? So I'm going to click on OK, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to increase the size a little bit more. And I'm putting it in the middle because I just want it to pop out a little bit like this. So I'm okay with that. And as you can remember, I also added a glow here and an arrow. So I forgot to add the glow. Let me add the glow a little bit again. You can see the effects showing up here. We used bevel and emboss and stroke. And I'm going to double click again. And I used a glow. So just like I added an outer glow with Superman, we're going to add an outer glow here. So we're going to go here. And we don't want the yellow. I want the white. You can add any color you want, of course. And opacity to 100, and I'm going to increase the size a little bit here. As you can see, the white glow is showing up immediately. You can also increase the spread of this glow. As you can see, if I increase the spread, it shows up a lot brighter. Maybe a little bit spread here. I think that's more than enough. I think I'm happy with it. Maybe decrease it a little bit. All right. So now I'm going to add the arrow. You can create arrows here using the line tool and the shape tools, but I'm going to use a PNG just to save time. So this arrow is an Adobe Fireworks PNG file. Make sure when you download something like it, you have a transparent background on it. An Adobe Fireworks PNG file works just fine. So you can use like this. If you don't know how to find one, you can go to your Google search. In your images, you'll have some tools there. On the tools, what you'll find is size, color, and some other stuff. So in color, just click on transparent and you'll find whatever you want with a transparent background. So I'm going to drag this here again. And this is a very big arrow, so I'm going to try and decrease the size again. Like I said, left click on the corner, drag it, or hold shift if you're using an older model. I'm going to use the curve again on the corner and tilt it like this. Decrease it a little bit more and add it right here like this. So this is a black arrow. We don't want a black arrow, we want a white arrow. So we're going to do that right now. And I think I wanted this a little bit like this, just so it can point to him again. So what we're going to do is, in order to change the color of this completely, we're going to call this arrow here again. We're going to double click on this empty space and we're going to go to color overlay. And here we're going to turn it into a white color. And we can also bevel and emboss this like we did with the text. And we're going to maybe add a little bit of stroke to it as well, same as the text. And we can also add an outer glow here. But instead of the white, maybe we can add some like a darker color. so it doesn't pop off too much. So I think that's more than enough. I think we're happy with it. But we're not happy with this showing up on top of the iconic, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the brush tool this time. And we're going to create a layer mask here, right in the bottom. Add layer mask. Now it's showing up. Now we can use the brush tool. We're going to decrease the brush size. And as you can see, white and black is showing up and not the colors because we added the layer mask, remember. The reason why I use the layer mask is that Photoshop doesn't allow you to erase existing layers that have not been rasterized. So we're going to brush on top of this. We're going to press X. So if you're having trouble erasing certain parts, just go here and see what brush you have selected. Select the hardest brush for the easiest one, and you can increase the flow if you want. And then it's going to start faster like this. So we don't want to erase so much, I think, maybe. Just a little bit. Okay. So now we're going to go back to Move Tool again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this below iconic. So you can see here it has hidden what was already erased. So I'm going to try and decrease the size of the arrow a little bit more. So while selecting the arrow here, I'm going to tilt this again. And I'm going to again shrink it using the corner and dragging it with my left arrow and holding Shift if you have an older model. I think this is, oops, sorry. I think this is good enough. Maybe I'll also go in the middle and maybe flatten the arrow a little bit. This looks nice. I think in my previous one, I also added an inner shadow to this, so we're going to do that a little bit. I'm going to go and double click on the arrow again and go to inner shadow. And I'm going to go to normal again, just because I like it. I'm going to add inner shadow with opacity of 100. So yep, I am quite happy with this. So it absolutely matches the previous one that I've made. As you can see, there's like little to no difference here. Again, you can group the text layers too, but I'm quite happy with this. I hope you are as well. Just a quick tip. Make sure to always save your Photoshop files or any other files that you're using on your Canva or Gimp or Affinity Designer all the time, as much as you want, because the more you save, the more you're safe from losing your creation. I hope you had fun making this thumbnail. I hope I was able to explain to you how to actually design a thumbnail at the same time the principles that goes behind the graphic design of the thumbnail. And if you want to share with me the kind of thumbnails that you have made using this tutorial, you can join my Discord or DM me on Instagram and share with me how I helped you with this. And let me know in the comments too if you want me to talk about any other aspects of the thumbnails, of the videos, of editing, and also filmmaking. I plan to make a few more videos like this, so make sure to subscribe to my channel and also subscribe to my main channel if you like listening about movies and TV shows and pop culture. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something tonight. See you next video.